this one is for Roos and Rusty. The Elite 11's wrapped up. We got some superlatives from our guy Charles Power, and both Georgia commits made the superlatives. Best deep ball went to Dylan Raiola, and best gunslinger went to Ryan Puglisi. I'm going to get the list up here, but those are two pretty good titles to have for Georgia's commits. And from what we know about both of those guys, seems like they lived up to the reputation.
Sounds like me on Senior Trip 91. Both of those awards.
Best gunslinger and best beat ball.
Yeah. I was hell with a Nerf ball on the beach, boys. Yeah, I think it's expected. You look at those two kids, highly recruited. I don't think that anybody questions a whole lot on either one of them. It's which one's going to potentially be the starting quarterback at University of Georgia is what everybody asks. But to see their performance, to see what they did against the best in a summer event, and I say this, the Elite 11 is an awesome event. It's a great organization, but take it for what it's worth. There's no pass rush, and you're playing with wide receivers that you really don't even know. So you don't get any timing. You just walk out there, shake hands, hey, throw a route. You don't know a ton about the guys. So anybody that goes out there, it is an honor, and you get mentioned forever with a great alumni base that's done through Elite 11. So for those guys that go out there and do that, they have fun and meet the other guys. It is what it is, but it also kind of validates that these two guys are big-time quarterbacks with big-time arms, and both are going to end up in Athens and battle this thing out. But they did nothing to go out there and raise any concerns from the Georgia Bulldogs perspective, and it shouldn't be from the Georgia Bulldog fan base. Like, these two guys are dudes, and there's a reason they have the offers, the Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State offers that you kind of look at for quarterbacks. And Julian Sayans, a kid that was heavily involved with Georgia. You look at Luke Cromenhawk there from Florida State. He's from Savannah. Aaron Nolan from Atlanta. Jaden Davis grew up in Atlanta till the 8th grade. I can go on and on with these guys and the connections there. So, listen, it's an honor. It's fun. Charles Power does a hell of a job. Our own 3 team did a hell of a job out there all week. But, take it for what it is. It's a summer event with no pass rush.
Yeah. And, I think that, to me, this wasn't a super surprising thing to see these be the superlatives that these guys won.
Correct.
That going into this, if you read Charles Power's comments, like going into it, he said, Raiola, that's his thing, man. He layers his throws about as well as anybody in the game in 2024. Ryan Puglisi, to me, the big encouraging thing about what we heard from them was that he progressed over the course of the week and seemed to really take to this talent. And listen, they're playing some good ball up there at Old Avon Farms. That's not Gwinnett County on Friday night. All right. I'm sorry to say, but that's a different thing, man. I mean, and so they're playing 8 games a season, that he's not throwing at D1 guys at all times. He came into this event with something to prove, I think. And Charles said going in, he throws a lot of fastballs. He's a guy who's going to really push it downfield, and he's unafraid with that. But how is he going to respond to playing with similar talent? I think that was pretty huge to hear that he kind of took to that like a fish to water to some degree and wasn't scared of the moment, didn't back down from anything. You expected this. Raiola's the number 1 guy in the class. And so Puglisi was the guy who came in with something to prove, in my opinion. I think he showed people that, hey, look, it's all there. And the reality is, if you're a Georgia fan, nothing that you heard coming off of this should sway you one way or the other. It's just all good news, regardless. It's not that this guy was shades better than this guy, or this guy was, an underperformer. You have 2 really capable and really outstanding quarterbacks, guys who caught the eyes of some fine evaluators, doing some fantastic things. And so to me, that's what you can take away from the Elite 11. Like Rusty said, it's a midsummer event. It's a 7-on-7 thing. I mean, and guys, perform well in those events. And I'm not saying that it means nothing at all. But at the same time, I think that all you can take away from this as a Georgia fan is positive.
No doubt. Here's what Charles Power wrote about Puglisi at one point during the camp. He showed excellent zip and velocity on throws over the course of the workout. There were times where you could hear the laces hiss through the air. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like Rusty on the beach with the Nerf ball.
Yeah.
Keep in mind what Matt Godwin told us on Bark After Dark. The only comparison that he could come up with, from a throwing perspective at Georgia's camp, Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Puglisi, like I said, to me is the raw prospect of the two. Raiola's been the guy. He's been through the whole thing. Puglisi showed up at camps last summer and earned a lot of his offers. And listen, a lot of trusted eyes believed that he was a guy definitely worth bringing in.
Yep. I also think one thing that I'll add before we switch topics here completely, I think it was big for those two guys to meet each other. I mean, for them to have, put face-to-face contact, they understand what each other are about. They're not just talking anymore. They are, they've met, they are working for a common goal. I think that that's a big thing. Jeremy wrote about Jeremy Johnson.
Their common goal is beating each other's ass, man.
Yeah, that's the goal.
They share the want to win the job.
Yes, but I do think until then, their common goal is getting as many talented players around them to help beat each other's ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely recruiting together. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think that when you do have a competition like that, it is good to just say, hey, we know what's up. We know what the score is. Let's go out there and do the best we can. And let's not hate each other's guts in the process. And I think that's a good thing that Kirby Smart's been able to do with his team, with his players. We've seen it play out now with Brock Vandegrift, with Carson Beck. They've got tremendous respect for each other, but they both know what's at stake and what they have to do to get that job done. All right, guys, we got a new commitment on the board here. Number 27 out of Cedartown. We've seen that before. Tae Harris, 2025 DB, committed to the Dogs on Monday night. And it's seems like a little ways out, but here he is, 2025 commit, adding to the strength of the Georgia class that's already starting to pile up some talent.
I'm going to defer to Northwest Georgia expert Rusty Mansell on this one.
Yeah, I've seen Tay quite a bit. It's funny, with Nick Chubb there and talking to him, and Nick's opened up over the years a little bit. Believe it or not, Nick talks. And I went down probably 2 months ago one day, and Nick said, "Hey, have you seen Tay?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen him." And I said, "What do you think?" And he goes, "Man, he's a great player." It kind of gave him his stamp. He goes, "Man, he talks a lot." He said, "He's a lot like Richard LeCount." And I said, "Oh man." He goes, "Yeah." He said, "But he's faster than Richard." So that's a big deal there. He ran a 10,900 meters this year, laser. He's a tough kid. And normally I would say don't pay a ton of attention to such an early commitment, but it's Cedartown. Kirby Smart's hoping they've got 20 more prospects on the team down there because that is one town they are the Cedartown Bulldogs. They are red, white, and black. And if you are a major Division I prospect that Georgia is heavily recruiting you, you're going to University of Georgia. So I think Tay's a good player. I think he's going to wind up being probably maybe a star when it's all said and done, that type position for him. But, with that, I just think that Georgia's starting to do a really good job. We're already looking at – it's hard to believe that we're had to take 2025 seriously. Like that seems like this 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But that's not. And those kids will – if you look at it, you get into December this year, if you say you get around the holidays, those kids are a year away from campus because most of these kids will be mid-years. So you're about a year and a half from being on campus, really, at the University of Georgia, even though it is a class of 2025. So I just think they're off to a great start. And I think we all remember seeing that Max Pretz picture of Justice Terry as an eighth grader going viral.
Yeah.
And, I mean, when you look at him now, Manchester, Dale McGee goes and gets him, and that is a very, very talented player. And you look at Elias Williams, who is now at Camden County, transfers over from Charlton County. He's a 6'6", 230-pound tight end. I know it's shocking that Todd Hartley has got the number one tight end in the country committed for the next class, but he does. But normally I would say, let's just mention this kid, move on. But to me, that I would be very surprised if he doesn't end up, finishing out and ending up at Georgia ultimately for Tae Harris out of Centertown.
Yeah, and somebody asked me, they were like, tell me what you know about him, which is certainly not much comparatively, Rusty. I'm not adjacent to Cedartown, so I don't get that that front row seat to these guys.
You got the Kirby copter there, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So, we got to cross over Fort Mountain to get over to your side of the world, man. I'm not trying to do all that, but what I will say is, like, to me, the kid, you got a really fantastic frame on that guy too. I mean, I said about 5'11", 6 foot on this guy already. I think Miles Split had him at 100 meters at like 10.7, 9 or something like that. That's early on in your career. So. What I said is also you got to give some credit to the evaluation team at Georgia, especially a guy like Fran Brown. This guy's looking like a corner early on, right? Well, you know who else he spotted in 9th grade? Ellis Robinson at Rutgers.
Yep.
If this guy is willing to accept your commitment and offer you, go. The offer sheet is not strong for Tae Harris right now. Central Arkansas, Georgia Southern on
Troy.
there. Yeah, Troy. I mean, it's not a who's who. If Fran Brown's willing to offer this kid, take the commitment right now, there's probably some huge upside here that I think that people need to latch onto.
You know where Tae Harris worked out 2 weeks ago? University of Georgia.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know what Georgia has an advantage over all these other D1 schools? They've seen him work out, and they've had another personal workout. So they see the size, they see the time, and then they put you through a 40 to 45-minute one-on-one DB workout with Fran Brown, Kirby Smart, and Will Muschamp. I mean, those three guys sign off on you. I just move on to the next one, And listen, talking about Ellis Robinson, you bring him up. That's a great point. When I sat with Ellis Robinson's dad in Nashville, and we were sitting there one night, and it was after hours, and I just said, "Look, I know Miami, and I know all these schools coming at you. What sells you on Georgia?" And he said a couple of things. He goes, not only is it Fran Brown is a huge deal, but Will Muschamp and the DBs that he's coached and he's put in the NFL. And then you start talking about Kirby Smart. He said, look, my kid is going to have at minimum these three guys for a while. Even if somebody leaves, I still trusted those guys that can develop my son. And let me tell you something, the way he said that to me, I told Chad Simmons the next morning, I said, Chad, that kid, I'd be shocked. I know there's other schools are coming at him, and you don't get a number one corner in the country easy. But right now, Fran Brown's got him, and just talking to his dad, who they were great people, his mom and dad, great people. They just feel like that they trust the Georgia staff, and they trust those guys that's going to develop their son.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to be a South Carolina or Florida fan and watch Will Muschamp be such a huge part of Georgia's success, because he is. And he has been since he got to Athens, returned to Athens, I should say.
He got Jonell Farrow last year. Will was the lead guy on that.
Yeah.
Out of Boston.